The case that we're discussing today is a lawsuit that we filed on behalf of Marty Lawrence, who is an Austin resident and was on flight 4819 from Minneapolis to Toronto. My firm, DJC Law, specializes in aviation accident litigation, and we were contacted by Mr. Lawrence earlier this week because of the injuries he sustained on the flight from Minneapolis to Toronto.
What kind of injuries did he sustain?
Well, as you might imagine, landing in Toronto and having the landing gear come off of the airplane and the airplane flipping onto its back, essentially, as it goes down the runway, was quite traumatic. Mr. Lawrence sustained back and neck and facial injuries as he was hanging upside down inside of the airplane. Jet fuel was soaking him. He was going down the runway with jet fuel all over his clothing, looking outside and seeing the wing catch on fire. As the plane came to a stop, of course, the flight attendants told everybody to unbuckle and egress the plane. He undid his lap belt and fell to the ceiling, landed on his head, which caused his neck to torsion and to turn, and caused him back, neck, and head injuries. He's already received medical care and attention and is receiving more medical care today.
All right, so in other words, he's okay. He's here and he's all right, and nothing else is going on elsewhere?
Well, he survived the accident. With regards to the extent of his injuries, we don't know the extent of his injuries at this time because he's still being seen and treated by doctors. In addition to that, of course, there's a great deal of emotional distress and mental anguish that he suffered as a result of being in a plane crash and being soaked by fuel as the airplane careens down the runway on fire.
So what happened after this? After they took him out of the plane, what were the series of events that led up to him getting back home here to Austin, and how did that happen?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. After he egressed the plane, first of all, he had to help open the emergency door. The stewardess could not open the emergency door, and so she asked him to assist her. He opened the emergency door.
And was he one of the, I know that some airlines, they do you are in this seating, do you wish and comply to help open this door?
Yeah.
Was he part of that?
I don't have that information right now. I'll try to get that for you, but he did open the door for her. And as he egressed the plane, they had to stand outside of the plane soaking in jet fuel for about 20 or 25 minutes. And then they were placed on a bus. Everybody was on the bus standing up. For 2 hours, they were on a bus right outside of the crashed plane before they were taken to the terminal. So they were all inhaling that jet fuel, the fumes from the jet fuel. They were standing around each other, soaking in jet fuel. And after that, they were taken to the terminal, at which point they went to hotels for the night. He had to get clothing. He had to buy clothing because all of their luggage was, of course, on the plane and wasn't accessible to them. And then he had to make plans to get back to Austin after all of this. He got back here today.
Did Delta help him make these plans free?
Yeah, I think Delta assisted him with making plans to come back to Austin, sure.
Okay, and can you tell me a little bit about what happened before? Did he expect anything that was to come, or was there anything that was out of place before this? And really just his plans getting home, where was he coming from, really?
Yeah, he was on a business trip from Austin to Toronto. He goes to Toronto on business trips quite often for the company that he works for. Marty was not aware at all that the plane was going to crash, of course, because if you look at the accident sequence, there is really no indication that it's going to crash until it actually landed in Toronto, at which point it landed hard and flipped over to the right and the wing broke off of the plane. There was one interesting occurrence during the flight. As you may have experienced yourself, prior to taking off from Minneapolis, the pilot came on the PA and said that they had a maintenance issue. And so they had to wait in Minneapolis a significant amount of time before taking off to Toronto.
And did he have any other contact with the other occupants of the plane during this whole procedure? Was he able to talk to them, see how they were feeling, and learn other experiences that you may be able to talk about today?
I don't have any information with regards to his communication with other passengers. That's something that we're going to go over as the days go by and we have more time to talk with him. Right now, we just wanted to get Marty some medical care and also get him back to Austin and get him back to his family.
Right. And where are the Canadian authorities at in the investigation now?
It's very preliminary. They're just starting out the investigation. We've got quite a bit of information because we have all of the air traffic control information and communication between the airplane and air traffic control prior to it landing. Because the airplane and cockpit are intact, they'll be able to remove the flight data recorder and the communication between the pilot and air traffic control. All of that will be available to them fairly rapidly. Because this is a commercial flight, the information on the flight data recorder will be extensive. We'll know the rate of descent, we'll know the speed the aircraft was traveling at, we'll know all of that information. And so that will give us a really good idea as to potential issues with whether the pilot was piloting the aircraft properly or if there was another issue with one of the systems of the aircraft.
So your client reached out to you regarding this whole situation, and I believe it was because of the money they offered the occupants, which was $30,000. And can you tell me yourself, and is that a sufficient amount of money for a scenario like this? And why do you think he reached out to you because of this in the first place?
No, our client reached out to us because our firm is one of the preeminent aviation accident law firms in the country. We have lawyers here who have worked on aviation accidents throughout the United States. And so he and other lawyers contacted us to handle this case because of our expertise. The offer from Delta Airlines for $30,000 came after he had hired us. Delta Airlines has offered what they call a no strings attached payment to all of the passengers on the aircraft for $30,000 to take care of incidental expenses and any expenses that the passengers have incurred up to this point. That is nowhere near what our client has paid or will have to pay as a result of the injuries he has suffered from this crash.
Right. Give me just 1 second, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's been a lot of crashes happening lately, as we know, and though this has happened in Canada, this is a very delicate situation because it's unlike a lot of the other situations happening lately with more injuries or more deaths. Is this something that is irregular for you guys, or is it something that you guys are used to, or how reliable do you think you guys will be able to deal with this kind of case?
Yeah, we've handled hundreds of cases. As you might hear quite often, aviation is still the safest form of transportation. Your viewers may not realize that there are over 400 plane crashes per year in the United States. And so even though you don't hear about every plane that crashes, they do crash fairly often. And we're talking about small private planes more often than not. I think it's been in the news quite often recently because several of the planes have been commercial aircraft, like the American Airlines crash in Washington, D.C., and the crash of the medical transport plane in Philadelphia recently. But we're very experienced in handling these types of investigations. We're very interested in improving the safety of aviation. We know it's a long process that involves experts, involves government entities, government agencies like the NTSB when you're investigating these accidents. But we're prepared to do that.
Now, what kind of rights do passengers have in situations like this?
In this particular situation, because it's a crash involving an international flight, There is an international convention called the Montreal Convention that will govern the rights of passengers in bringing claims against the airline and other responsible parties in this crash. But individuals who've been affected by the crash, passengers do have the right to bring a claim under the Montreal Convention against Delta, against Endeavor for the injuries that they sustained.
Now, are there any other nuts and bolts details you want to talk about before we move on?
Just what we're trying to do is improve the safety of aviation and represent our clients as zealously as we can. We feel that Delta and Endeavor were negligent in the way that they operated this aircraft, perhaps also in the way that they maintained it. And so we're looking to hold them responsible for having injured our client.
And how much compensation do you think your client really deserves in a scenario like this?
We have no idea what that will be. We're not close to making that determination. The crash just happened 2 days ago, and so it just depends on the amount of medical care and the level of his injury.
Is there anything else you would like to discuss with us?
I don't think so. Thank you.
All right, that works. Thank you so much, really.